is the Silver and Black Today podcast, your source for Raiders news and information. Now, here's your hosts, swaggering boisterously.
Happy Hump Day, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday, podcast number 68 here. Yes, the podcasts are a little less frequent during the offseason, but of course, you can catch us on our radio show on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. in Las Vegas, the future home of your Raiders, the Silver and Black today, 8 to 10 a.m. again Sunday. You can also stream that as you're streaming this live on the radio.com app. So if you're outside of Las Vegas, which I know many of our listeners are, you can do that. You can check it out. The radio.com app is killer. Download that and listen to us on Sunday. Every Sunday. We don't take a week off. There is no bye weeks. There is no off season for the Silver and Black Today. Also check out silverandblacktoday.com, the website that started it all. News and views on the Raiders all the time. We try not to do stuff that's not of high value, but check it out and make sure you do that. I am Scott Gulbransen. I am your host, editor, publisher of silverandblacktoday.com, and joined, as I am on Sundays now, by Kelly Kriner, our NFL draft analyst, but he's much, much more than that. At least that's what you tell me, right, Kelly?
I've never said that, actually. You've been perpetuating that rumor, so I'm just going with it.
All right, man. Well, that's good. So you roll with the punches. That's half the battle is knowing what you don't know. There's a lot of people out there who think they're know-it-alls, but you're someone who knows a lot, but you're not a know-it-all, as someone once told me. So there you go. But let's jump in, Kelly. You know, the conversation on this Wednesday, we keep hearing about Antonio Brown, right? We keep hearing now that the Steelers are in a hurry to make this trade. By Friday, all of the kind of inside source folks that you see out there in the interwebs, reporters and whatnot, are saying that that it's a one-horse race, and that race is being run by John Gruden, Mike Mayock, and the Raiders. I want to get your thoughts on this before we get into whether or not Antonio Brown's worth a first or a second-round draft pick. First, I want to talk about the story. And the way I want to talk about that story, Kelly, is the fact that it's my view that this is all being really fluffed up and really perpetuated by the Steelers, because the Steelers will owe Antonio Brown a big bonus on March 17th if he's not gone by then. So to me, it behooves them to trade him as quickly as possible before next week. And so as many times, and don't fool yourselves, folks, if you don't think NFL teams and folks with the organizations don't float out stories because it benefits them and they want it to help with the situation. I think that's what's happening here. I don't know whether or not he's going to be traded anywhere by Friday, but that's my sense, is that it's much more a sense of urgency on the Steelers' part than any team that might be talking to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. I don't think the bonus is really that big of an issue because, I mean, I believe it's $2.5 million. Is that what they owe him?
Sure.
For an NFL club, $2.5 million, if you're going to be the difference between, say, a third or a first-round pick, they would pay that and just wait on it because the cash isn't an issue. The salary cap thing's not an issue. So I don't think it's that big. I don't think it's that big of an issue in trying to get this to go forward. I just think that they've got a deal that they're willing to take, and that they're just telling everybody, listen, have your best in by Friday or whatever, because we just want this whole thing over with.
Right, and of course, a lot of this is coming from Ian Rappaport, who had reported that the Steelers are wanting to wrap up the trade soon, whatever that means. And yes, the $2.5 million bonus would be due to Brown by March 17th. And you're right, it's not a lot of money in the scope of running an NFL franchise, especially when it comes to salaries, especially with the Steelers. So I think it might play a little bit into it, because I think they just want themselves rid of the situation altogether as they prepare for pro days and then they prepare for the draft. But if we look at this, you're hearing some chatter, and it's all about the Raiders. But then again, I mean, to me, I wouldn't put as much stock in it as a lot of people do. I know a lot of very credible reporters and folks are out there saying that the Raiders are really in on all that. But to me, it doesn't really mean anything. The Raiders seem to be the focus of all of these crazy things or rumors around trades or who's going to draft Kyler Murray. And I think that's just because of the wild cardness of what the Raider organization is right now with John Gruden there and with Mike Mayock in his first job as a GM. Do you see it any different?
Oh, no. Yeah, the Raiders are throwing in all this because they're an easy target. I mean, especially with the Antonio Brown stuff. I mean, it's, sometimes the easy answer is the right answer. If a team's going to give up a 1 or a 2, it's going to be the team that's got 4 picks in the top 35.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the easiest way to do that.
No, that makes sense. And to me, I also get that the whole Gruden piece plays into it, right? Because the fact of the matter is, they're looking at Gruden as this guy who's willing to do crazy things, and somewhat very ironic to me, Kelly, because in many ways they're expecting him to act like Al Davis would have acted in 1989.
Well, I was going to say they're just expecting him to act like the Raiders have acted. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you on that. Signing Antonio Brown is a total Raider move of the last 40 years. So it's just something, like I said, it's an easy fit. The narrative fits easy. It's not a hard story to convince somebody that the Raiders are going to go out and make a huge splash like this because it's something they've done many times before.
Right, and I think too that sometimes we all know that towards the end of his life, the misses with Al Davis and some of the players that he selected based on their pure athleticism didn't work out. But I also think I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a while and defend a guy who can no longer defend himself. It worked for a long time, and then the game changed a little bit. Salary cap obviously changed a lot of the dynamics. But I think that when you're looking at things through the lens of today's NFL, dealing with the salary cap, dealing with all the different issues that you have with the collective bargaining agreement and players and all the things that come in, it's a different game. So you can't expect, and yes, teams still make bad decisions, and the Raiders could make a bad decision too. But I think people are putting too much stock into the history of the Raiders. And I know some people would look at last year and say, well, Colton Miller. Well, I think Colton Miller is going to be an okay player. It was where he was drafted that was more the issue. Now, if we look at Antonio Brown, let's start talking about him now, because that's really the conversation today on what the Raiders are up to, or maybe up to, we should say. Do you think, knowing everything we know about Antonio Brown and the issues he's had in Pittsburgh, if you're a team, let's not even say you're the Raiders, let's just say a team in general looking for wide receiver talent, knowing the talent that he has at 31 years old, would you want to go get this guy?
If I am a team that is close to winning a Super Bowl and can convince him that, hey, come in for 1 year, after this we'll look at your deal, I would do it. Because if anytime you make a trade like this or you do anything like this, you get that 1 year honeymoon year.
Right.
And if I'm close to winning a Super Bowl, that's all I want. I would give up a first or a second round pick. Like if I'm the Indianapolis Colts, I'm giving up, they've got the Jets second rounder. I'll give up that and maybe a future something to get him.
Right.
Because I'm looking at 1 year of having him. I'm not looking at him super long term. I'm not going to give him a huge contract. If I can get him to come in for the $11 million or whatever I owe him next year, if I can squeeze the best out of him, maybe win a Super Bowl, I'll let him walk after that.
Yeah, and I think that we talked about that right a little bit yesterday when we saw each other, which was even if I'm the Raiders, if the price isn't too high. Now, of course, that's always the question is and we're going to get to the question of, is he worth a number one pick? And I think it'll get back to your answer on, are you close to a Super Bowl? But at the same time, if you look at it and what's happening here, to me, if you're going to look at a player like this, yes, you have to factor in, of course, behavior and all that kind of stuff. But there's no denying the guy's talent. I mean, I see a lot of people throwing around his age at 31 and comparing him to Amari Cooper, and the production that you see with Antonio Brown at his age, and we know what happened last year, but you have not seen any diminished skill set from him, right? So if you're going to go out and get him for a year or even two, or 3, you can't expect. Now it can happen fast, okay, right, Kelly? But still, this guy is still one of the best players in the NFL. If you're in the market for a player that's going to help you get over the top.
Yeah, I mean, he's still in amazing shape, and he's still that guy that you can throw out there. And he's the kind of guy that'll work in any system. So I don't think it matters how you throw him out there. He will find a way to get open and get the football.
Now, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, if I'm Oakland, though, I mean, there's no way I want him because I was under the impression that since we traded everybody, we're rebuilding. You don't rebuild with a 30-year-old wide receiver.
No, that's true. The same can be said for a lot of what I've seen comments today from some media and, of course, fans, which is Eric Weddle. Safety, right? The Raiders need help at safety. And I even saw one reporter say, hey, they might want to take an exception with Weddle because of his leadership capabilities. But we heard that last year, right? I'm not saying Eric Weddle couldn't come in and be a good player for Oakland or somebody else. But, again, are you committed to getting younger? If you're committed to getting younger, then you're not worried so much about next year as you are about 2 years down the road. And the same goes for wide receivers. Now, if you're looking at this and you're a GM, and let's say we take your parameters and we say, okay, we're close, or we think we're close. Would you trade a low first round draft pick for Antonio Brown?
Yes. If I am in that 20, kind of probably 25 to 32 range, if I'm a team that's right there, I would, because I mean you can get a good wide receiver in those range in this draft, but it's not going to be somebody that's got a chance to put you over the top. And if there's one thing we've learned is you have a chance to go for a Super Bowl, you have to go after it. You never know when you're getting another shot. Yeah, no, that's true. And I think that looking at this situation too, now let's put on the Raider color glasses, the silver and black glasses. If you could get him, first of all, I assume that your position is you're not going to trade for him at all, correct? If you're the Raiders, unless it's a ridiculously low offer? Yeah, what I would offer that, I'm like, if you're getting for your third, sure. But, I mean, I'm not giving up a first or a second for him, no. Okay. So, now, if you look at that piece, and I agree with you, Kelly, I don't think – it's not that I don't like Antonio Brown as a player or that I think that he would be a fine fit at a future point if you're close, to your point. But at the same time, I look at this draft. I look at the young wide receivers in this draft, and I say to myself, boy – there are some really stellar ones that are going to be there. And now maybe the DK Metcalfs of the world won't be, but there will be some folks at the end of the first round and at the beginning of the second round that I think can come in and be an impact receiver for you right away. Do you disagree? Oh, no, I agree 100%. They can come in and play right away. Obviously, they're not going to be an Antonio Brown. Right. But it's like I said, are you trying to win a Super Bowl the next 2 years, or are you trying to bring up young talent? If you're trying to bring up young talent and get a baseline for the next few years, you do, like I said, you don't trade a asset for an aging star. Right. Yeah, no, especially after you traded young talent last year, and then you bring somebody in. But we always talk about this too, and I think sometimes it gets overplayed, and then sometimes I think there's where there's smoke, there's some fire, and that is John Gruden and the type of player that he likes, and the fact that he can go out and he looks at the talent level of somebody like Brown and won't be able to pass up. To me, isn't that what Mike Mayock is there too, to help him prevent, is to say, hey, John, we know you like this guy, but remember, stay the course. This is the plan. We need to get younger. There's a heavy wide receiver class in this draft, and we're not focused on next year. We're focused on getting better next year, but we're really focused on taking that next jump in 2 to 3 years. Well, that's what he's there for, but whether or not he can actually get that done or not is another question, because he could give every sound reasoning to not do something. If John Gruden wants to do something, John Gruden can do it. Sure, it's sort of like my doctor when he says I shouldn't have cigars. But, I'm not going to listen on that one. I was going to say it's like you're trying to talk your drunk friend out of a bar from doing something stupid. Guess what? You're the sound voice in the room. Your friend doesn't care. He's going to do whatever the hell he wants to do. Well, we'll see how it all works. I think we'll get a little more insight, Kelly, to that relationship, because if there is,
if there is some sort of wildness that happens with either draft picks or trades, you got to then sit back and say, okay, was that something they agreed on, or is that just Gruden kind of doing his thing? Although outside of some of the calls last year, I don't think he's done anything too crazy, trading Khalil Mack or anything. But to me, this Antonio Brown thing too, if you look at it, I always look at how the fans react, especially when we're on the podcast here, is to represent and talk a little bit about how the fans are feeling about it. And it's really interesting to me because since I didn't grow up and I'm not a lifelong Raider fan, I kind of look at it from a different perspective. And that is, the Raider fan base, when it comes especially to player acquisition, I find it to be very Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? There's people who are like, oh, how can you not go get the best wide receiver in the game, one of the best wide receivers in the game? And then I hear the other half saying, oh, that would be the most horrible thing in the world. What are we doing? Let's go sign, so-and-so. Is that something that has always been the case, do you think? Or do you think it's just the fact that, man, everybody just wants to damn win for once?
It's always been the case for things like that. It's just, especially now, social media and everything, everybody has a voice, so you hear everybody's opinion. Before you would hear the people that you were talking to, like in the bar, at the game, or things like that. Now all you do is hear about, everybody's got everybody's opinions out there. You see it all the time. And I'm sure, especially for the people in Oakland, they don't care about a rebuild right now. They got 1 year left. They would like to see a team win. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's always been like, you don't want your team to, you don't necessarily want your team to lose all their games. But if you're not winning a Super Bowl, I want to be bad. I want a better draft pick so I can win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you look at this Antonio Brown thing, and of course, you're hearing a lot of things that this is going to be done by Friday. And I don't necessarily agree with that per the reasons we talked about at the beginning of the show. But at the same time, it is starting to get to what they call the new year, right? So as of next week, and we know folks who've been tagged already. We know folks who are going to be free agents for the most sense. And some of those names that keep coming up too, and I want to throw some of these out at you to see your view on it. One of the big ones, clearly because of the need for help in the defensive backfield, is Landon Collins. Where's Landon Collins going to end up, and do you think he could be in silver and black?
It's definitely a possibility he could be in Oakland. I'm just not sure. You kind of have to. He only has he's kind of an in the box type of safety guy. You kind of have to use him one way. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how good he really is. When I think he's going to get a massive payday from somebody because he is a young. Although there's a lot of free agent safeties out there.
Exactly.
It might you might be able to get him on a little better deal. It's just I think if you don't use him in one specific way, I'm not sure how good of a player he is.
Yeah, no, that's good too. And I think that's the other thing too with, you have in that class, you look at Landon Collins, Earl Thomas, Jamarcus Joyner, Tyrann Mathieu, Adrian Amos, Clinton Dix as well. I think in the case of Clinton Dix, I think he would actually be a better fit for the Raiders. Is he an equal player? I don't know. That's up to interpretation. But if you're on the market, I should say, for a safety this year, and you're the Raiders, who would you take a run at?
I'm going after Amos.
Yeah,
and you're not hearing anything about him.
No, you're right.
To me, if I'm going to pay somebody long term, it's going to be him. I just think Earl Thomas. Obviously, if money wasn't an issue or anything, Earl Thomas, is the best of that group by far. But he's going to want to be the highest paid safety. You've got injury history, and like I said, you've got a team that's not ready to win right now. So obviously, he's off the board for me. But I would go Amos, and it's not even close. Yeah,
I know he's one of those. He was one of those unsung heroes for that defense in Chicago last year, and I'm not surprised that they haven't made a run at him yet. But to me, that is where you find your value, right? As a guy that is young, is talented, and you're going to get a lot of room out of. You're going to get somebody, sign them to a long-term deal, and they're going to be around and be an anchor in that defensive backfield. And to me, he's able to do that along with Joseph, who I think Joseph made that step last year. We have to see if he continues to improve. But at the same time, to me, you got to go out and get one free agent, I think, defensively at least, especially back there, to really supplement what you're going to do in the draft. Now, is there anybody in the draft knowing this? And I know we're going to talk a little bit about the combine, but when you look at that class of free agents, which we know, and you and I talk about all the time, the free agents available this year overall in the NFL, not exactly something that's going to wake you up excited at night. But is there anybody in the draft that you think would be a realistic possibility for them in that first or second round that you would rather have than Adrian Amos?
If the safety class, I mean, it's not deep. There's a couple of really, good players in there. Nazir Adderley, obviously, everybody's talking
Everybody
about.
knows
could
him.
Be good.
Yeah.
I think Juan Thornhill. I'd like to have him, but I just think he won't be there in the third, and 35 is a little too early to draft him.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can get him later in the second. So possibly if maybe they could trade one of those picks down. But I mean, it just, like I said, it's just going to depend on what's Amos's payday going to be.
Yeah.
If he comes in and he's not getting the big offers, I'm definitely taking him, because you have we've seen on the field, we've got a product we know to where it's a complete crapshoot with draft picks all the time.
Right.
But especially with this class this year at safety, because it's not the deepest, and if you don't get one of the top 2 or 3 guys, it's a complete crapshoot.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and it'll be interesting when you look at, and we talked a little bit about it on the Sunday show, but let's revisit. And I know we're gonna have a guest on as well Sunday to kind of do a full combine postmortem, including a look at the Raiders. Now, if you look at what happened, you and I kind of agreed that there was a couple surprises, not a ton. Everybody kind of penned out how they would. For you though, was there somebody that was on the borderline that for the Raiders, looking at that and under that lens, that performed so well that now you think, boy, they should try to make a run at him earlier than they might have had he not performed as well in the combine?
Well, I think especially with the wide receiver, because N'Keal Harry kept coming up as a possible Raider pick in the end of the first round. He's definitely I don't think he's going to be there at 24 or 27 now.
Right.
So if he's somebody they're looking for, they're going to go after. I've always had Montez Sweat at that 24 pick to the Raiders. There's no way he's making it that far now.
after his 4.41 40?
I mean, it wasn't only – I mean, that's the thing. It wasn't just that. It was everything else.
Yes, yeah.
I think he's going to get overdrafted a little much, because if you go back and look on the tape, you don't really – I mean, he was obviously I had him as a first-round draft pick, so, I mean, he was obviously a good player. But it's just once people saw that, it's like, okay, that's 8 draft slots up. He just moved, I don't see that as much I don't see it as much on tape or during the game. But 4.41. That's all people are going to say. So he's out of the window for the Raiders.
Well, and that's the case. There's some people out there who say, "Oh, 40 yard don't matter. Like, it doesn't matter." And I would agree if that's the only thing you focus on. So in the case of Montez Sweat, I mean, it's remarkable that a man of that size can run that fast. There's no question about it. Does that mean he's going to be as successful in the NFL as some are making it to be? Not necessarily, but I do agree with you. I think he'll get overdrafted, which is unfortunate for the Raiders, because I think he would be a really nice fit for them, as you mentioned way back when you did your first mock draft on silverandblacktoday.com. But at the same time, the 40 mixed within everything else, and that's what you keep alluding to, right, was when I brought up the 40, you said, yeah, but it wasn't just that, it was everything else. And to me, I think that's what people look at when they look at the combine. What's lost on people is the stuff that's not as exciting to watch, right, which is some of the drills that you and I watch because we're sick, but that other people do not watch, and that's where you tend to see the technical side of things and whether or not a player is really going to be everything that you thought they would.
Yeah, it's funny because especially with your defensive lineman, the 40's not nearly as important as it is the first 10, like your 10-yard split.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bosa's 40 was like 4.7 something, which was good but not great. But he tied for second on the 10-yard split. That's the biggest thing for your lineman. Wide receivers, everybody's making out like DK Metcalf, his 3-cone. But his agilities were so bad, and they were bad.
Yeah.
But that's just not what DK Metcalf's game's going to be.
No.
It's like everybody raves about Hakeem Butler and N'Keal Harry's. They're testing and how they killed the combine. They didn't run those drills because they knew they were going to be bad at them. Because big wide receivers, that's not what they do.
Right.
The 3-cone and things like that are important for your small wide receivers. The guys that are getting in and out of breaks quick to get separation. The guys that are running 3 breaks in a route. When you got the bigger guys, they get their separation from their size and their speed. And that's what's important.
So then, if you're a big wide receiver, why are you doing those drills?
I'm not sure why he did them. And I'd like to know whether or not he ran those before the other guys, and they just saw what happened, and their agents or whatever told. Because they made a big deal about every time you saw somebody, the second they did a test, they ran over to their phone. They're getting coaching. They're getting texting. It's possible that, Harry and Butler's people are like, listen, Metcalf just ran that poor. Don't do this.
Yeah.
And they just, it's smart because everybody, DK Metcalf destroyed the combine, and all everybody's talking about is his great 40 and his historically bad agility.
And his shirtless pictures, because the guy's cut unbelievably for a wide receiver and a guy that size. Crazy stuff. But again, the combine has become a media event. We talked about this on Sunday, and so things get blown out of proportion. But they do play into the game that is the preparation up to the NFL draft in April. And I want to talk about that too, because the elephant in the room, of course, is the Kyler Murray stuff. Now, Kyler Murray, the media really, I think, and I don't say the media as in everybody, but there was a certain segment of the media who really seemed to have, as did the NFL, a desire to not only promote Kyler Murray as kind of the star of the combine, but also to really make him the story and to make him look good. Because, yesterday, Charlie Casserly really went off on Kyler Murray, saying that he had talked to sources, and the sources said that he was not good at study, he was not good in the meeting and the interviews, and all of that. And that now we're hearing today that his height was kind of messed with, right? So they over reported his height. The NFL did, which is kind of crazy, but possible, I guess. So when you look at the Kyler Murray thing, of course, okay, Kyler Murray's going to go to the Raiders. Now the big story is Kyler Murray to the Cardinals, to which I would say if I'm the Cardinals, I don't know what you're thinking, but you tweeted out the other day a 3-way trade with the Cardinals, correct?
I did, and I kind of just threw that out there. It was one of those things. I mean, you never see 3-way trades in the NFL,
right?
Like you do, like in Major League Baseball or in basketball.
Yeah.
But if they're serious, if they're really going to go after Murray, I mean, obviously you're going to be trading Rosen. And the trade that I threw out, and I actually like this for all teams involved, but obviously, like I said, it will never happen, was that the Oakland Raiders would trade Carr to the Giants for the Giants' second-round pick. The Giants' second-round pick would go to Arizona, and Josh Rosen would go to the Raiders. So basically, you're getting a second for Carr, and you're trading that second for Rosen.
Yeah. So like an even swap, but three teams benefit instead of two.
Yeah, and because I like Carr, I've been a Carr defender, but I'll take Rosen any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And the little thing about that also is financially speaking, he's on his rookie contract, but the bulk of it has already been paid by Arizona. So actual cash wise, I believe it's something like $3 million for the next 4 years each year.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding me! I didn't even know it was that low.
I think because the signing bonus is the guaranteed money. The guaranteed signing bonus is like almost all of the rookie contracts now, and that was going to be your salary cap number gets spread out, but the actual cash value you're laying out, the bulk of it has already been paid. So you're getting him cheaper than most backups in the league. It's
the most intriguing trade possibility that you've raised since the Aaron Rodgers to the Raiders.
Well, the funny thing about that trade was everybody I talked to, the Raiders fans didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And now, just financially speaking, Aaron Rodgers is the only untradeable asset in the NFL. Because of the dead cap hit, they'd be $20 million over the salary cap if they traded him. So there's no way they can possibly do that.
Right. Well, and I, like you, I'm a guy who thinks Derek Carr can be the quarterback for the Raiders and will be the quarterback for the Raiders, and we wrote about that on the website. But you never know. Draft day comes and things are happening. But overall, when you look back, just to tie a bow on it, Kelly, when you look at this combine, I thought overall it was probably the most uneventful and boring combine in the last few years, mostly because of the first round talent that's there and who wasn't there versus a year ago, 2 years ago, and the names that were at the combine, the quarterbacks involved. It's become such a quarterback-focused draft for the most part, even though this year is all about the defensive linemen, especially up top. You disagree with that, or did you have the same feeling I did?
No, yeah, I agree with you. It's an offensive-driven league. The main big names in the draft this year are defensive players. That's not sexy. It's not really fun to talk about or watch. And you only have Dwayne Haskins is a good quarterback, but he's boring. He's a pocket passer there wasn't anything to get too excited about, which is why you saw the big push for Kyler Murray.
Yeah. No, and I get the Kyler Murray story. Here you have another two sports star, right? Who we went through that drama of, is he going to choose baseball? Is he going to choose football? And then it's football, and then it's like, do you really believe he's going to stay with football? So from a news cycle perspective, it makes sense because it continues. It goes on, right? You're able to do it. One of our guests on Sunday, Kelly, is going to be Vinny Iyer. He's the NFL writer for the Sporting News, and he just released today his next mock draft. Of course, there's not that many mock drafts out there this time of the year. I kid. And he is one of the guys, and we'll quiz him on this intensely, that believes the Cardinals are going to take Kyler Murray number one. And the way he laid out his mock draft, I love this because you and I have always, from the beginning of kind of the draft season and looking at it, have regarded Quinnen Williams as a great pick for the Raiders and that he would be a perfect fit. He has him going to the Raiders at number 4 after Bosa going to the 49ers, which is completely dead on if this happens, and then Josh Allen going to the Jets, and then Rashawn Gary going to the 5th. Although the way people talk, I could see the Raiders taking Gary and leaving Williams there, but let's hope that doesn't happen for them. But when you look at this and the Kyler Murray, everything in the first round, at least at the top 4 picks, and anything can happen, right? But the Kyler Murray wild card out there is really the only thing that I think could completely kind of disrupt that top of that first round, don't you think? Yeah,
it's, you've got the 3 main defensive guys that are kind of top of everybody's board. And then you've got a bunch of guys, I say in that, that 4 to 12 range, but they're going to kind of just go in any order, so it's not going to really shake anything up. The Murray thing, he could go 1, he could go 4, he could go 6, he could go 12.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea, but that's the first domino that's going to need to go anywhere to really shake up the draft. Now, to go back to kind of the Antonio Brown and stuff,
yeah,
I think the Raiders do get Antonio Brown. That's going to completely take them out of the Kyler Murray stuff, because I think there's no way, one, you're going to be trading assets to get both. But I don't think there's any way you want him in a locker room with Antonio Brown. Just you've seen what he's like with Big Ben, who's a veteran who has. You think he's not going to be like that with a rookie? So yeah. I strongly think if they do sign Brown, they're out of the Murray race. If they don't sign Brown, it kind of keeps them still in that Murray.
Do you see? I just think, and maybe it's just because I refuse to believe. And again, I think Kyler Murray was a fine athlete. I don't believe in any part of my being that the Raiders are going to take Kyler Murray. I don't think there's any chance. yes, I guess I could bet on it with somebody. I won't, but I just don't see it happening. I think it would be one of the most disastrous, not because of the player per se, just based on what they need and where they are and what the quarterback class looks like next year, and the fact that the Raiders, they might be another 6 or 7 win team next year. I don't see why you would do it unless you're absolutely convinced that this is the guy who's going to take you to the Super Bowl, and I don't think he's going to take anybody to the Super Bowl.
Well, you just answered your own question. If they think he's a Super Bowl caliber. Now, let me ask you something.
Okay.
If it's Bosa, Allen, Williams, 1, 2, 3, are you still as opposed to taking Murray at 4? If you get him without having to give up any assets, if he falls in your lap, is that a little more palatable to you, or is it just that you don't want him at all, period?
No, I'm a firm believer, and I know the Raiders need offensive weapons. Don't get me wrong; they need plenty. They have holes everywhere, but I'm a firm believer that if I'm the Raiders, I'm at least 2 of my first 3 picks. So the 2 of the 3 first rounders, especially the number 4 pick, should be a defensive player. I know people, because it's an offensive league now, people disagree with me, and I have good friends who argue with me all the time that I'm crazy and that defense doesn't matter anymore. But you have Gary there, you have Montez Sweat, who you talked about. You have some guys there who I think could help that team. Even Ed Oliver, who could fall even further down, which I think he'll probably go around 14 or 15. But to me, I would do that. I still would not go for Murray unless it's to take him and trade him to somebody else. But to me, somebody might. I mean, if you're going to do that, they'll probably just trade up anyway. But if they're in a spot where you're not going to get one of those 3 big defensive linemen that you mentioned, I think it's still such a deep draft that I would take one of those guys below him, or I should say above him.
Ask your friends that said it's an offensive league. Ask them if they watch the Super Bowl.
I do, but they disagree.
The best offense in the NFL scored 3 points. Second behind Kansas City. Depending on what metric and everything you look at, defense still wins championships.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And that's the argument I always use, Kelly, is look, I'm not saying that you have to have a great defense to make the playoffs and to even make maybe even a deep run in the playoffs. But if you look at even the Patriots, right? So the Chiefs, we know their defense was 28th or whatever, 29th. But if you look at the Patriots, they were sort of right in the middle of the pack. And I even said this last year when everyone thought under Jack Del Rio that 2 years ago when they thought the Raiders were going to be much better than they were. But their defense was so poor the year before that I said, you know what, if they're just a middle of the road defense and you have a top 10 offense, you're in a good spot. But you can't have, and the Chiefs are an outlier because of the season the kid had at quarterback, right? And the weapons they have. But to me, you cannot win and sustain a championship season by outscoring everybody.
Yeah, well, especially you get towards the end, starts getting cold out. You're playing outdoors. You know, if you're playing in New England, if you're playing in Kansas City, you know, your defense is going to have to make a big stop or two. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. And the Patriots, you know, like I said, not a great defense, but good, solid, with some veterans on there, and they were able to do that. And so to me, that's what I would do if I'm the Raiders. I'm going to go defense as a priority, with the caveat, as it is always a caveat in the draft. If there's a guy there that you cannot pass up because they fell too far, or something happened, or you gained another pick because you traded down or something, then okay, then go get a guy for offense that is amazing. But I just think that you got to get that defensive front solidified, whether it's an inside guy, which I prefer in Williams, but if he's gone, then get your edge guy, get another interior guy, and build from that defense. Because to me, that's what you have to do. You can always go guy. I think it's a little bit easier to go get some of those offensive players. I'm not saying guys like DK Metcalf are going to fall out of trees, but what I am saying is that they can go out and get some free agents here and there and supplement that offense, because the Raiders are going to need a bunch of offense. But if I'm them, I'm going to focus on defense in this draft, because that's where the strength of the draft is. It's very deep. And then next year, when we have a much better offensive draft, even if you decide next year, let's just say for the sake of argument, not saying I want it to happen or that I expect it to happen, let's say you decide to go for a different quarterback direction next year. You're going to have a lot of folks at the top of the draft, a much better draft class. And then also the running back class, Kelly, I think is also much better. This one is terrible. Next year it gets a little better.
Yeah, this running back, I mean, it was just a total dud and just a total disappointment. Like I feel so bad for Bryce Love right now getting hurt in his last game, because even if he had a mediocre combine compared to what we thought he was going to do, he would have been the superstar of this combine. Granted, you know, everybody's got Jacobs from Alabama kind of as their number one now. He didn't run because he said he had a groin injury, which, believe it or not, it doesn't matter. He didn't run. But it's just everybody that went out there just disappointed.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And to me, that's the thing. I think when fans especially look at the draft, they hear a lot, obviously, because we all read, and information is much more readily available than it used to be. I remember when I was younger and would go to the draft with my dad, we'd have our copy of Our Lads draft guide, right? Because we were draft nicks and we wanted to see what was going on. Now there's just so much out there, so people look at this draft and say, well, we need this as a team, as a fan, speaking as a fan. We need this, or our team needs that. But in reality, when you look at the draft, you have to look at it from a couple different parameters. One is, what are your needs? Of course. But secondarily, where is this draft deep in? And so you might have three priorities. Like, let's say you need a defensive lineman, you need a defensive back, and you need a wide receiver. But the class is so heavy in wide receivers, and they're so good, and looking out a year from now, it's not as good. You got to prioritize that. I mean, to me, if I'm a GM, that's what I do.
Yeah, it's tough to look ahead at, what's next year's draft going to be. I mean, you see, like, especially like the true sophomores and stuff that have put up great numbers. But I mean, after his freshman year, Christian Hackenberg was the slam dunk number one pick quarterback.
Good point.
Good
point.
Last year at this time, Ed Oliver was the slam dunk number one pick.
Right.
So I mean, you can kind of plan ahead to the next draft, things like that. But man, it's tough. And everybody's looking 2 drafts ahead right now for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Who knows what happens? I mean, I think he's going to be a superstar, but who knows? God forbid he gets hurt or in an accident or anything. So you kind of have to take each draft. You can kind of plan ahead, but you can't really build a whole draft strategy.
Well, so since we're talking a little bit about the Kyler Murray situation in the draft, the other intriguing quarterback, and I actually like better than Kyler Murray, is Dwayne Haskins. Not saying that he's the be-all, end-all, but at the same time, I think he can be a solid quarterback. Do you think the Giants grab him at 6?
No, because I think the Giants are, and I think to a fault, they're still all in on Eli Manning. If I'm the Giants, I'm definitely taking Dwayne Haskins at 6 if he's there.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I just get the feeling that they're, they passed up on, 4 quarterbacks they could have had last year for Barkley. There's not a Saquon Barkley-like talent in the draft this year. But I think they're just 100% behind Eli Manning, and they think Eli Manning's still got something left. It's one of those things that there's not like a superstar or somebody that I see that they're going to be like, okay, we want this guy over a quarterback anyway.
Mm-hmm. I
just think they're all in on Eli, and they're going to do something kind of not so much off the wall, but they're going to be that first team that kind of throws a curveball in the draft if no one trades up for Murray.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And our listener Corey asked the question. He says, saw where Baltimore was going to try and re-sign him, but do you see the Raiders making a run at C.J. Mosley?
They should, because our linebacker position's been bad for decades. C.J. Mosley's not the most exciting guy out there, but he's the solid guy you want in the middle of your defense. You're going to have younger edge and outside linebacker guys. He's a coach on the field. I mean, he's that kind of guy I want. I'd throw a ton of money. Because you're not going to get, especially now after Devin Bush's combine, there's no way in hell Devin Bush falls to 24.
Yeah.
That was, you knew he was going to test well, but, his combine may have been more impressive than Sweat's.
Huh.
Just for the pure and simple reason that the stuff that the linebackers, the speed, all stuff like that, you can see that translate into more on-field stuff than you can for a defensive lineman. But Bush destroyed the combine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's definitely. I thought he might go second round. I thought Mac Wilson, there was possibly he might go before him. I don't see any possible way Bush gets past 20 to the Steelers.
No, I don't think so either. And I agree with you. I knew he was a good player and liked him as a player, but yes, watching him at the combine, boy, he just mashed it up and it looked good. Now, we also saw today, talking about linebackers, this was not a surprise to me, and that was Jamie Collins cut by the Browns. And besides thanking him for his contribution, they also said that his salary did not align with his performance. Now, 29 years old, going 30 years old, clearly he's not going to make the money he did. And Collins, I think, really look, he had a good agent. They traded with the Patriots to get him in mid-season in 2016 for a third rounder, which was, I think, another Belichick steal probably. But $50 million, and the Browns are saying goodbye to him. Does he have anything left in the tank? Do you think, watching him this past year, that Jamie Collins, I'm not necessarily talking about for the Raiders, but just overall, you think Jamie Collins is going to end up getting a good role somewhere?
I think he's still got something left in the tank. I think you're going to be able to get him pretty cheap. So he's definitely a guy you're going to roll the dice with. He also seems to me kind of like the guy you're kind of going to know, if not at the end of preseason
camp
by about 4 or 5 weeks, if he still wants to play, if he still has anything in there. So if you can get him without a whole lot of guaranteed money to where it's not, you cut him mid-season or anything like that, I think he's a good guy to roll the dice on because he was a good player. It's just people need to realize you can't make deals with the Patriots.
Yeah.
They re-signed a double murderer and they let him go. They didn't franchise Trey Flowers. Why isn't that? He's one of the best defensive linemen. He's the best free agent defensive lineman out there.
Oh, no doubt.
Didn't franchise him. Like, if I'm another team, I'm like, crap.
What don't we know, right?
Yeah.
Where does he end up? Where does Trey Flowers end up?
I have zero idea, to be honest with you. I think the Patriots are going to try to re-sign him. I think they're okay with letting him walk, which is why they didn't franchise him.
Yeah.
I keep coming back to a lot of this stuff. I keep coming back to Indianapolis because they've got $100 million in cap room.
Right.
They're a team that can make a jump to that next level to be a Super Bowl contender. They just re-signed Margus Hunt for 2 years and $9 million, which to me is a steal. I mean, granted, the guy's only had 1 year of production, but he's only had 1 year with the Colts, and they started him out at defensive end, moved him into defensive tackle, and he flourished in both roles. So you're getting a guy who's a starter, if not a high-end role player for $4.5 million a year. I mean, that's a steal.
Yeah.
So take DeMarcus Lawrence isn't going anywhere because Dallas franchised him. Roll the dice on Flowers if you're Indy.
Yeah. No doubt. I think the Jets might make a run at him. What do you think?
Yeah, the Jets are signing everybody like every year.
That was a joke, and you knew it, so that's good. There's a couple other intriguing names out there. A guy that runs a little bit hot and cold. He was a top 10 pick back in 2014, but Anthony Barr from the Vikings, the linebacker. Is that a guy who could fit for the Raiders?
I don't think so. To me, he's very scheme specific.
But he's playing out of position there a little bit, don't you think?
Well, I think that because they kind of switched up what they've done in the last couple of years in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
It's I wasn't high on him coming out of the draft. Haven't really been that. I mean, he's looked good at times, but he's just kind of guys like I'm not. Him and D Ford both. Unless I'm a straight 3-4 type, I'm not taking a chance on either one of them.
Yeah, no, that's true, and I think that. D Ford, the franchise tag stuff, it's always interesting to see why teams do it, obviously for negotiation purposes and things like that. But in the case of Barr, I like the guy. I just think from everything I've read about him, they're expecting him to get about $10 million a year. I don't see him being worth $10 million a year. If you get him less, yeah, I might take a chance on him. I wouldn't say chance, but he might be a guy that I would consider. But the free agent class at linebacker again too is not great. It's just not overall. It's tough. And if you look at position by position, you can't really say, oh, this is a great free agent class in this position. Yes, I think defensive back actually, you talk about 4 or 5 guys is pretty good. It's not the best ever, but certainly there as a focus for this year, which benefits the Raiders at least from that perspective. What about on the offensive side? If you're a team looking for a running back or a wide receiver, is anybody out there at all that interests you? I think the wide receiver free agent class is the opposite of the draft class in that it's pretty weak.
Yeah, the wide receiver free agent class is very bad, which is why you're going to see Adam Humphries get like $9 or $10 million.
And Golden Tate as well.
Which I don't think Tate gets quite as much. 31's going to scare some people off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like Humphries. I think you put him in the right situation, he's going to have it. But I mean, there's a lot of money to be spent, not a lot of people to spend it on. So whoever gets him is going to have to overpay for it.
Now, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and you're going to see that in a lot of positions, which is why $10 million a year for Anthony Barr sounds about right to me. Because if you want that linebacker position, there's not a lot of other options out there. So if you've got, it takes one team to fall in love with them and another team to bump up the price.
That's right. Now, okay, so we're going to, before we move on to a couple little quick things before we say goodbye to everybody tonight, want to get your take on this, not on what should happen, but all this chatter about Antonio Brown by Friday. Is he a Raider by Saturday, between Saturday and Monday?
If I have to bet on it, I'm going to say yes.
Do you? Okay.
Yes. And I think it's our second round pick.
You think it'll be the number 32 or 35? Yeah, 35. Yeah, and you know what? I disagree. I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's a lot of PR going on here for the Steelers. If it were to happen like you say, and it were to go down for that pick, and they were able to get the defensive needs that they need at the top of the draft and low in the first round, and maybe an offensive player there as too, it wouldn't upset me as much because of what they have. I just don't. I think it's too early. I just don't see what. Okay, so Derek Carr might have some more touchdown passes. They might score a little bit more, but is it going to get you in the playoffs next year? I doubt it. And for what you'd be giving up, I just don't see. I don't see why you would, but then again, I'm not John Gruden, and I don't fall in love with players like that, so we'll see how it goes, man. It'll be interesting. Now, today, we heard it was kind of a yo-yo day with the Raiders, Kelly, and the Lease talks in Oakland. We heard early in the morning, and the great beat writer for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, I think the best beat writer covering the Raiders, but I'm biased because I'm in Las Vegas, Michael Gelkin wrote this morning that, boy, they had some issues. They hit a big snag. And then just 7 minutes before we went on the air tonight, he reports this: an issue that stood to jeopardize the Raiders' lease agreement for a final season in Oakland appeared close to being resolved. Progress that could result in a Coliseum Authority vote by next Friday. So it looks like the worst-kept secret, and I don't know. I think this is just a pissing match, and at the last minute somebody said, well, I'm going to give an FU to them, and we're going to do something. But it appears that this is going to happen. No surprise, and I think we're going to be seeing the Raiders playing on an infield at least for a little while next year.
Yeah, it's at the point now to where it's the only option. So it's gonna have to get hammered out at some point, no matter. And like you said, it's a pissing contest. Well, guess what? Neither one of those end up with both people getting clean,
or staying dry.
Right? Yeah, both sides are gonna have to give up a little something. Both sides are gonna have to hate whatever they did, but it just has to get done.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Well, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you being here tonight. And, of course, I will see you on Sunday. And, again, Vinny Iyer from the Sporting News will be on our CBS Sports radio show, which you can hear from 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time on CBS Sports Radio 1140 or on the radio.com. Just search CBS Sports 1140 and you'll find us there. And we'll also stream live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, so you can come into the studio and watch as we do this show. So, Kelly, any closing thoughts on Combine, Antonio Brown, what the Raiders are up to?
Hopefully by Sunday on the show, we're talking about how Antonio Brown is not a Raider. And hopefully by the end of the Combine, we're talking about how Kyler Murray is not our quarterback.
Yes. So that's the other thing, too. It'll be an interesting couple weeks. Of course, pro days are coming up. We're going to talk about that a little bit on Sunday because I had a listener DM me and say, hey, I'm a football fan. I'm just starting to read about draft and combine. What's this pro day stuff? What is a pro day? So we're going to explore that a little bit on Sunday. So get ready for that, Kelly. I want to thank, too, our sponsor, of course, the Laborers Local 872, sponsor not only here, but on silverandblacktoday.com and on our radio show on CBS Sports Radio. Appreciate their support as always. For Kelly Kriner, I am Scott Gulbransen. Make sure you visit the website, silverandblacktoday.com. And we appreciate you being with us tonight on a Wednesday. We hope you're having a great week, and we will talk to you this weekend. Take care, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
This is the Silver and Black Today podcast, your source for Raiders news and information. Now, here's your hosts, swaggering boisterously,